All right, class. Week 4. All right. So my objective for you truly is not so much to like get an A on your paper, get it. I know being in grad school that you all really care and want to do a good job. Um, but at the end of the day, when you're sitting in front of a client treating it, they're not going to care what your GPA is. They're going to care that you actually know how to help them. And I say that because I want us to really learn and grow. And I understand that this learning style is an 8-week class and it is going to feel like you're drinking from the water hose. So, what I'm going to do today is kind of go over the assignment and give more like specifics for the next assignment. So, no one's really going to be dinged, but we're going to grow and learn from this assignment of what to do next week. So this week, you're going to be learning about systems. As therapists, we think systemically. We means we're looking at the bigger picture. So we're going to watch Gay Hart's lectures. We're going to read her literature. And as you're learning about systemic, I want you to highlight some key concepts, key constructs from the systemic theory that will help us understand and explain pathology. As a psychotherapist, we're trying to make sense of human behavior. We're trying to make sense of symptoms, relationship dynamics. As Gayhart says, all behavior makes sense in context. All behavior, even the ones that we perceive as um, horrible or traumatizing, difficult, even thinking about your current relationships that you're in. If somebody acts a certain way, there's a reason for it. There is a reason for behavior. And so what theories do is theories helps us to put language and words to help us understand someone's behavior. So we're going to look at this example of the person-centered through Helen's case, and then we're going to apply this for this systems theory. So here we have the introduction of the client. But we're going to look at, so Helen has anxiety. She has withdrawal. She's a perfectionist. She has excessive concerns about criticism. This is how she's presenting. Now, from a person-centered humanistic theory, how would a therapist who is practicing psychotherapy, utilizing this framework, explain and understand and conceptualize what Helen is going through? So let's take a look. One of the first concepts we hear about with the person-centered is this concept of incongruence. And incongruence is a mismatch between the real self and the ideal self. Now, you don't have to do your assignments this detail, but the reason why I like this example because it shows me that the student fully understands the concept. And that's the goal. The goal is to understand the therapeutic concept so that way it helps you understand behavior. So here we are, this concept of incongruence, and we see this a lot from the person-centered. So Carl Rogers suggested that the psychological distress can occur when there is significant difference between a person's authentic self, who they really are, and their ideal self, who they are aspired to be based on external expectations. So we have their ideal self, the external expectations that someone is putting on Helen. In this case, it's her parents, and then her true authentic self. Because there's a mismatch, the person-centered theorist would say because Helen is experiencing incongruence, she is causing her anxiety or it's causing her distress. So by recognizing this gap, individuals can work toward greater alignment between the real self and ideal self. And then this student cited Gayhart. Here we have now applying it to Helen's case. And this is what I want to see. I want to see you apply the concept into the case vignette. The real self, Helen is intelligent. She is responsible for managing household duties and caring for her younger sister. Also, she's into art. This student didn't add the art, but that's also that she's very artistic. Ideal self is The daughter, her father, and family expect high expectations of continuing education, postgraduate, getting a degree. Expect her to be the financial provider and feel obligated as her father placed her to be the son in the family. Let me. Okay, sorry, I had to pause my screen to make sure that I was looking at the same vignette. Okay, let's share. Okay, here we go. I don't like this one. Sorry, I want to make sure that I have the vignette up. So actually the art was the other case vignette. Don't want to get you guys confused. So here we see from the vignette, Helen is the second child in low-income family, financial difficulties. So the internal conflict is that Helen is intelligent, and she is responsible for managing household duties, but the ideal self is that she has these external expectations that her family is putting on her to be the financial provider and to be getting a degree. So from the vignette, we can see that Helen is experiencing incongruence. So the goal would be to increase congruence or decrease incongruence. How do you do that? Well, person-centered therapist would say to ask questions to increase awareness to what Helen truly wants. It is asking open-ended, what is it that you will like, Helen? Helping Helen to understand what is it that she really wants. How can Helen understand and have awareness to what is her true, authentic self? This therapist did go ahead and put the symptoms. You do not have to put the symptoms in this format. Let me say it again. This is just an example format. I am not that concerned with the format as much as I am with you all really wrestling and sitting with the material and understanding it truly. So as long as you can show that you understand the material, that you understand what you're reading, that you're able to apply the concepts, feel free to do it in a format that works for you. This student just happened to do it within like this bullet point. That's fine. You can do it in paragraph form. Like I said, do it in a way that feels most comfortable for you, but this is easier to read. Okay, so here we have the therapeutic goal. The therapeutic goal is connecting directly to the theoretical concept. So here we have one of the symptoms is incongruence. So the goal would be here to help Helen in identifying the difference between her current self and her ideal self and assist her in taking steps achieving greater alignment between the two. So this is a great therapeutic goal from a person-centered lens. Here's the interventions. Interventions is person-centered reflection, using open-ended questions and reflections to help Helen recognize her real self and ideal self. Example, what would your childhood look like if you didn't have all those expectations and obligations from your father and family? Perfect. What this therapist didn't do was to cite the intervention, where they got the intervention from. And this actually is a Gayheart, in the Gayheart book, is the intervention of open-ended question. Here's another intervention, experiential technique. This therapist did not decided another resource outside of the Gayheart, which is completely appropriate to do if you want to, but it's the experiential technique. Experiential techniques are therapeutic methods that engage parents by helping them connect with their emotions. These methods aim to increase patients' awareness of their inner experiences and help them find ways to cope with their fear and their pain. It can be mindfulness exercises, body work, guided imagery, and role playing. This is a humanistic, person-centered intervention that is appropriate to use with this modality. Here's another one. Clarifying questions. Gayheart talks about the use of clarifying questions in a humanistic, person-centered theory. So counselors use fact-focused clarifying questions to ensure that they're understanding the basic information that makes up the client's experience. These questions avoid bias by ensuring the counselors don't project their assumptions onto the client. For example, is part of your culture to work and care for younger siblings when you were young? How did you cope? All right. The next one would be conditions of worth. So let me pause here. So do we see here how the first theoretical concept of understanding Helen's dysfunction, her pathology, her distress, which is her anxiety, is that she's experiencing a level of incongruence. Then the treatment goal would be to increase her congruence. And then how do you do that is by the interventions listed in Gayhart's book or in other sources that you find through the LPU's library or other resources on the internet. And so the interventions are right here. Person-centered reflection. Now, mind you guys, there's multiple interventions. There is a laundry list of interventions that you could use. You do not have to use these exact three. Therapy is not black and white. Therapy is not a math problem. It's not like 1 + 1 = 2. Psychotherapy is you actually have a lot of creativity and you have a lot of freedom as a therapist. My hope is to give you a bunch of tools in your clinical toolbox to pull out to use when, like, oh, this actually might be appropriate to use here. But the interventions have to be based in a theory. So hopefully by the end of this class, you will have a bunch of interventions to pull from various theoretical approaches that you could apply at a given time. And so please don't get overwhelmed with making sure you do it right. Let's just practice using these theories, practice applying these theories, practice using different language, and just practice with different interventions. So if you guys did not use any of these interventions or therapeutic goals, that's fine, as long as you did use some from the person-centered or humanistic umbrella. All right. All right, so we have another one, conditions of worth. This is another concept of person-centered, is feeling loved only if she's met expectations. Here we are. Carl Rogers talks about conditions of worth develop when individuals believe their value comes from meeting external expectations. So Gayhart does talk about this in her book. It's a key concept in person-centered counseling. It refers to how individuals internalize expectations from others, such as parents or society, to gain love and acceptance. This often leads to a disconnect between a person's true self and their behaviors, causing them to live by others' values instead of their own. It can hinder personal growth and self-actualization, cited Gayhart. So another person-centered concept is that to describe Helen is that Helen feels she has conditions of her worth. Helen feels that she is not truly loved and accepted for who she is. She feels her worth is conditional. Okay, how? Here we go. Pressure and stress caused by father's demeaning comments. If you do not have a degree, you will become a nobody. And if you fail, it's because you're lazy. So right here is an example of Helen feeling distress because she feels her conditions of worth rely on her getting a degree. And that condition is from what her dad said to her. She believes that her father placed her in the role of the son in the family, expecting her to become the financial provider. So here he is, another condition of her worth. She's not accepted for who she is, being the daughter. And the sister is highly critical, calling her irresponsible and interfering with her school by contacting her professors. So then the therapeutic goal right here aligns with the therapeutic concept of conditions of worth. Therapeutic goal is to help empower Helen to challenge her conditions of worth, fostering a sense of self-worth that is rooted in her own values and not relying on external validation. So does this make sense how Helen's distress is from not feeling like she is accepted unconditionally versus she feels her worth is conditional. And this therapist gave examples. How do you do this? Here's an intervention, just some examples. Unconditional positive regard, meanings valuing Helen no matter what she says or she does. Providing a judgment-free space to express her true feelings to feel accepted. This is a very appropriate intervention to do as a therapist using unconditional positive regard. Here's another one, is that recognition and expression of feelings. The therapist itself, by allowing Helen to express her true thoughts and her true feelings, is a very powerful intervention because it shows Helen that her feelings are acceptable, her feelings matter. The therapist accepts the client without conditions. The therapist accepts the client unconditionally, and that in itself is a very powerful intervention because it's going to help Helen feel um, like she has value, she has worth. And in this process is going to lead her towards self-actualization. The therapist here says, the goal is to help Helen recognize, embrace, express her own emotions. As she progresses towards self-actualization, she'll develop valuable skills for assessing and managing her own responses. And then the therapist side of Gayheart. Now, this here, cognitive reframing of self-worth, this is it's also a cognitive behavior therapy intervention, but we could use it for person-centered. Is to basically help challenge her thoughts, challenge her conditions of worth. And so helping her to see that this thought she has, I'll be homeless if I don't pass my exam and don't graduate, I am nobody if I don't get a degree, is a cognitive distortion. It is a belief Helen feels about herself, which is not true. And this is preventing her from feeling like her worth is unconditional because she has these thoughts. All right, another concept is shoulds. We see this in Gayhart's book. It is a also important concept from the person-centered humanistic umbrella is Helen is shoulding on herself. She has internalized expectations. The concept is shoulds. Shoulds represent society and family expectations that can create internal conflict when they clash with our own true desires and values. This pressure often leads to tension as individuals try to balance external expectations with authenticity, promoting self-reflection. And then this therapist cited the shoulds concept from Gayhart's. So here, this therapist plugged in Helen. I should not fail my exam. I should graduate and get a job. I should become the financial provider for my family, and I should be a perfect daughter. Helen feels this. She is shoulding on herself. So the goal is to decrease the shoulds, to eliminate the shoulds, to break free from the shoulds. However way you word it, that's what we're working on, is to work on the shoulds. So you can say to help decrease the shoulds, to help bring awareness to the shoulds, for the way that you word the therapeutic goal, you have freedom in how you word it, but you want to understand the concepts. So this therapist chose to use the words break free from the shoulds. And then the intervention is challenging the shoulds. Helen will write down her should statements and reframe them into self-empowering beliefs. For example, I can do my best and not worry. I can make my own choices. Here we have the therapist should have cited these interventions because there are examples of these interventions in Gayhart's book, as well as other sources. So the Gestalt experimentation, Helen would be encouraged to take proactive steps to challenge a should and reflect on her feelings during the process. Now, she could relax by listening to music instead of studying. So this here, the therapist is getting creative. This is not in Gayhart's book. Gayhart doesn't talk about she could relax by listening to music. But do you understand the concept of it? Is what does Helen want to do? Helen wants to do what? Helen wants to, if we read the vignette, Helen wants to Let me see what she wants to do. She wants to, let's say the therapeutic goal would be, okay, Helen, I hear you have a shit on you that if you don't get a degree, you'll be a nobody. Helen, what do you want to do? And then that's the intervention, is to encourage Helen to do what she wants to do versus what she ought to do. Another one is you should be the financial provider. Helen, what is it that you really want to do? Do you want to be the financial provider, or do you want to move to Africa? That's not in the vignette, Helen wanting to move to Africa. But do you get what I'm saying? It's the intervention would be helping Helen to figure out what she wants to do versus what she should be doing. Okay, here we go. Another concept is boundary disturbances, enmeshment, and diffuse boundaries. So the concept is healthy boundaries allow for individuals while maintaining healthy relationships. If boundaries are blurry, diffused, or weak, it leads to relational enmeshment. And then the therapist cited here. And so here we have this therapist using an example of the introjection. This is a boundary disturbance. So if you look at Gayhart's book, page 310, we'll see the Gestalt boundary disturbances and this one concept, introjection. Taking in others' beliefs without question. Helen feels that her father has placed her in a son's role as a financial provider. This expectation, coupled with pressure from her father and sister to pursue postgraduate education, has left her feeling overwhelmed and anxious. So here we see that Helen has taken on someone else's belief, swallowing them whole without questioning them. Here's an example of Helen doing introduction. Another one is confluence, merging with others, losing individual identity. Helen often feels overshadowed by her family's intense involvement in her life. This pressure brings a mix of academic stress, responsibilities, and financial burdens. Here we see retroflexion, turning emotions inward instead of expressing them. As a result, Helen suffers from lecture hall phobia, which causes difficulty engaging with any schoolwork, avoiding university faculty members, withdrawing from people. Now, this is the thing, guys. Um, you may be like, well, how are you getting this information? How do you know exactly what to say? My point is that this is where we get to be creative. This is where we get to play with the vignette. We get to play with the case vignette because when a client comes to you and sits in front of you, there could be multiple reasons why a client is struggling or experiencing distress or anxiety. So feel free to use some freedom to put some possibilities. Let's just a hypothetical here. Let's be creative with the vignette. As long as you're able to show me that you understand the concept and have freedom to be creative with how you're applying it. I really hope that that makes sense. But here we have here, as a result, Helen suffers from lecture hall phobia. Now, this might not be why she suffers from lecture hall phobia, but it is a good possibility. This is a good assumption. Okay. And then the therapeutic goal is to help Helen identify and confidently express her personal boundaries, fostering meaningful and respectful relationships. Okay, let's see. All right, so I hope this was helpful in understanding how to apply a theory to your case. So for this week, when the next week is going to be James. So this week we're learning systems. Next week you're going to apply systems to James. My suggestion to you is to look at the vignette this week. Read James's vignette. And as you're learning about systems, as you're listening to Gayhart's lectures, as you're reading the book, feel free to look up Google Scholar, look up at LPU's library, look up system theoretical approaches, look up systems theory interventions, look up case conceptualizations based on a system theorist. And then as you're learning about systems, thinking about systems, try to picture James in the systems theory. If you see, so here's an example. One thing that you will learn about is triangulation. That's a concept that the system theory talks about. It also talks about differentiation talks about diffusion, talks about enmeshment. Do you see that in James's vignette? Do you see any um, areas where James needs to differentiate? Do you see any triangulation? So as you learn the concepts, apply it to this week's vignette. I hope this was helpful. I know I said last week I'd be more than willing to do more live Zooms. If you guys want more, I really want this to be um, student-led, meaning you tell me what you need. I don't also want to overwhelm you and add more to your plate. As we know, we're all busy. So let me know if you're wanting another live lecture. It doesn't have to be today. If you want more help, let me know. So what we'll do is I will have another Zoom tonight. If you guys want it, just tell me. If not, then next week and Monday's lecture, we're going to be going through systems more specifically, and I'm going to give you another just for the Zoom. We're going to use another case and apply in systems. So you get familiar with applying systems to a case. So that way I'll help you with your vignette. I'm going to watch your videos today and then provide you all feedback. Please reach out if you have any questions. Like I said, my goal is for you not to get a perfect paper. It's to understand the concepts. And so hopefully this example was helpful. See you all soon.